Well, hello again. This is Pam, and it's Wednesday, May 6th, and welcome to the reading of the Record Courier. We begin today's reading with the area deaths. Edith Carolyn Nelson passed away on May 13th. There will be visiting hours from 12 to 1, a remembrance service at Newcomer Farley Funeral Home, 131 Canton Road, Akron, Ohio. Immediately following will be graveside services at Hillside Memorial Park in Akron. Mark A. Morosi, age 58, passed away of a massive heart attack on Sunday, May 3rd. Cremation has taken place, and due to the COVID-19 pandemic, a family service and interment at St. Mary's Cemetery will be held at a later date. Carol S. Mayer passed away from this troubled world on May 1st. The interment of her ashes will occur at the Wilderness Center's Foxfield Preserve in Wilmot. Charles E. Proctor Jr., 85, of Kent, passed away Monday, May 4th at UH Portage Medical Center in Ravenna. Cremation has taken place and a memorial service will be held at a later date. Mary Jane Pryor, 96, of Greenwood, Indiana, passed away Monday, April 27th at St. Francis Hospital in Indianapolis, Indiana. An online memorial talk will be held at 1 p.m. Saturday, May 9th, 2020. On the internet, on Zoom, and by telephone conference call. Well, this concludes the reading of the Record Courier Wednesday area death notices. Now, let's move on to our first article. Ohio Education Pays Price in Budget Cuts by Randy Ludwell, the Columbus Dispatch, and Krista Cano, Record Courier. Ohio's K-12 schools and higher education are paying the biggest price in the $775 million in state budget cuts enacted immediately to deal with the coronavirus crippling state tax collections. The pandemic eroded state tax collections by $867 million, below estimates in April. Office of Budget and Management Director Kimberly Murnix told reporters on Wednesday. Even as the state begins to reopen its economy, the tax will continue to be severely depressed in May and June, leading up to the end of the state fiscal year, June 30, when the budget must be balanced. No further budget cuts are expected since the state has an approximate $500 million cash balance it can spend to stave off further reductions, Murnix said. The state also can transfer funds from accounts outside the General Revenue Fund if needed. Details of the cuts came on the possible eve of Governor Mike DeWine's announcement of reopening dates for other closed businesses on Thursday, including dine-in restaurants and bars, and Ohio's daily virus cases and death increases. Murnix did not dwell on what cuts or other actions will be required in the new budget year beginning July 1 and ending in mid-2021. State officials are not touching the $2.7 billion rainy day fund until then. DeWine announced Tuesday that basic state aid for K-12 schools will be reduced by $300 million, an average 3.7% cut of the state's annual foundation funding for public, charter, and private schools, packed into less than 2 months. Schools have been physically closed for the rest of the academic year, but continue online learning. In total, Portage County school districts will lose $4.12 million in state funding. Murnix said the cuts were equalized on a per-pupil basis based on local property tax wealth, the ability of districts to raise a larger share of their revenue from local taxpayers. In other words, poorer districts fared better with the cuts than wealthier districts. Aurora, for example, will see the greatest dollar reduction in state funding in the county at $263 per pupil, totaling $746,522, whereas Windham will lose $118 per pupil, totaling $59,905, the lowest dollar loss in the county. Waterloo, which is currently in fiscal caution and recently had its 1.25% earned income tax defeated according to unofficial results, will lose $195 per pupil, adding up to a $222,012 loss in state funding. Streetsboro, which has to make about $600,000 in cuts annually, will lose $229 per pupil, totaling $495,045. James A. Garfield will lose $188 per pupil, totaling $221,007. In 2018, district voters approved a 1.5% earned income tax. Earned income taxes do not affect unemployment compensation, and the district does not yet know how its local income tax will be affected. Here are the state aid cuts for other Portage County school districts. Kent will see a per pupil reduction of $196 for a total of $561,991. Southeast will see a per pupil reduction of $188 for a total of $298,886. Ravenna will see a per pupil reduction of $168 for a total of $431,908. Crestwood will see a per pupil reduction of $220,000 for a total of $373,068. Rootstown will see a per pupil reduction of $205 for a total of $251,495. Field will see a per pupil reduction of $222 for a total of $455,882. About $55 million in cuts also were made to other education spending, such as student assessment, school report cards, and unspent voucher scholarship funds, Murnick said. The budget director downplayed $210 million in cuts to Medicaid, which covers health care for the poor, blind, and disabled. She said an additional 6% in federal pandemic-related funding means no loss of coverage for recipients, those who have suffered job losses due to the pandemic. Reduction in administrative and information technology costs, coupled with a scheduled adjustment in the rates paid to managed care providers, will cover the reduction, Murnick said. Public universities and colleges will shoulder $110 million in cuts, or 3.8% of their overall annual basic aid from the state. Kent State University lost $6,085,166 of its $160 million appropriation. Neomed lost $788,181 of its $20,725,152 appropriation, and the University of Akron lost $3,763,338 of its $98,956,702 appropriation. Spending in other state agencies is being lopped by $100 million by June 30, with self-directed cuts. With the state prison system exempt from mandatory reductions, the Department of Job and Family Services slashed its budget by $36 million in the largest reduction. Agencies with significant fee and dedicated tax revenues outside the General Revenue Fund also are seeing cuts. The Ohio Department of Transportation, which has seen its funding decline with lower gas tax revenues, is getting a $71 million cut. Murnick said no state employee layoffs are scheduled, but added, "We're not taking any of our ability to control personnel costs off the table. We anticipate taking several steps to control personnel costs. A ban on hiring and promotions remains in place." The forced closure of non-essential businesses due to the pandemic led to the loss of nearly 1.1 million jobs across Ohio, drastically undercutting income and sales tax collections. Income tax collections plunged $636 million, or 50% below estimates in April, in part to the filing deadlines being moved to mid-July. The sales tax take dropped $237 million, or 24% below the estimates. Tax collections reflected a $1 billion swing in only 2 months. At the end of February, the state had pocketed $249 million more than expected for the fiscal year as the economy hummed along. Tax revenue then plummeted, with April ending $777 million below the fiscal year estimates on which the state budget was built. If the state, over the entire budget year beginning July 1, cuts the equivalent of what is being chopped in the current year, reductions would total more than $4.7 billion, or about 20% of state-only dollars devoted to the general revenue fund. Meanwhile, with decisions at hand on reopening more businesses, state health officials reported 607 more coronavirus cases and an additional 90 COVID-19 deaths on Wednesday. The numbers padded the overall count of confirmed and probable cases to 21,576 since March 9, and increased the death toll from the infectious disease to 1,225 people. Portage County reported 262 total coronavirus cases, with 69 hospitalizations and 46 deaths as of Wednesday. The new numbers were higher when compared to Tuesday's total of 495 more cases and 79 more deaths, some of which continue to be weeks old before they are reported. But the 607 new cases remained below the 21-day average of 656 new daily cases. The state pledged an aggressive increase in testing to help restrain an expected growth of coronavirus cases as the state reopens its virus-shuttered economy and Ohioans confined under a stay-at-home order begin to hit workplaces and stores. Ohio restaurants are prepared to reopen their dining rooms with coronavirus precautions as they await the announcement of DeWine's expected decision on Thursday. Our restaurants are ready. We've talked to hundreds of them, and we are ready, John Barker, president of the Ohio Restaurant Association, said Wednesday. Barker said he's received no signals at all when a modified public health order would take effect, although the group is seeking May 15, 2 months to the day dine-in service was suspended by the pandemic. After assembling working groups of business owners to recommend virus precaution practices, DeWine also could announce Thursday when bars, barbershops, hair salons, gyms, and other businesses on the indefinitely closed list can reopen. Association surveys show an estimated 42% of Ohio's 23,000 restaurants, from mom and pop diners to fine sit-down dining, have temporarily closed and are not offering carry-out or delivery of meals. Several hundred restaurants, perhaps as many as 700, have permanently closed, unable to survive the loss of business, Barker said. It's been tough. And about 300,000 laid-off restaurant workers account for more than a fourth of the nearly 1.1 million Ohioans who have lost their jobs, Barker said, with many waiting to be recalled to work. The Restaurant Association has recommended protections for employees and patrons, such as encouraging face masks, adjusting seating to require 6-foot social distancing, and employee health checks. Ask about requiring servers and cooks to wear face coverings, which are required for office workers who went back to work on Monday and for employees of retail stores and service businesses opening Tuesday. Barker said that's the state's call. It's not our place to say, he said. The state prison system on Wednesday more than doubled the number of virus-infected inmates who have recovered from COVID-19 to 2,189, or 51%. Another 2,105 prisoners still are listed as afflicted with coronavirus. The Department of Rehabilitation and Correction also reported 261 of the 483 employees with infections have recovered. A corrections officer at Marion Correctional Institution and a nurse at Pickaway Correctional Institution have died while working at the 2 worst-hit prisons in the nation. Marion reported 1 more inmate death to raise its toll to 12, and Pickaway which houses the prison equivalent of a nursing home, also reported another fatality to increase its inmates' deaths to 26. 4 inmates also have died out of the Franklin Medical Center in Columbus. Well, our next article is titled Kent State Cuts $30 million from Their Budget by Kristen Cano. Kent State University on Wednesday finalized more than $30 million in cuts for the next fiscal year to make up for losses associated with the coronavirus pandemic. Those cuts will come in the form of a salary adjustment model for non-represented employees, pay freezes for both tenure-track and non-tenure-track faculty, and a voluntary buyout package. The cuts will help the university decrease its budget by 20% to make up a shortfall from a reduction in state support as well as a decline in enrollment. Our ongoing commitment is to plan responsibly a budget that reflects our best understanding of the impact of the pandemic. Kent State President Todd Diacon said, "We think it's best that we plan for 20% budget cut, and with a 20% budget cut, we can only reach this reduction by lowering payroll costs." On Tuesday, Governor Mike DeWine announced that $110 million would be cut from the state's higher education institutions. Kent State will lose about $6.1 million of its $160 million appropriation. The university has about 2,200 non-represented full-time employees who will each be affected differently by the salary adjustment model based on their salary. The entire model will save the university $5.7 million. Diacon is taking a 12.5% cut to his $475,000 annual salary, while members of his cabinets, deans, and those with salaries of $200,000 or greater will see a salary adjustment of 10%. As salaries decrease, so do the percentage cuts, with those earning between $38,000 and $49,999 seeing a 2% decrease, and employees earning less than $38,000 seeing no reduction. Those whose salaries are being adjusted will be granted leave days that may be used in lieu of or in addition to vacation days to be taken during fiscal year 2021. Staff with salaries of $50,000 or more will receive 10 leave days, and those with salaries between $38,000 and $49,999 will receive 5 leave days. Mark Polichajenko, Senior Vice President of Finance, said the adjusted model is in place for fiscal year 2021, and at the end of the fiscal year, it will be reviewed to determine if it should continue through fiscal year 2022 and beyond. The modified collective bargaining agreements will affect more than 770 full-time tenure-track faculty and more than 530 full-time non-tenure-track faculty who are represented by the Kent State chapter of the American Association of University Professors. The union will extend its agreement by 1 year and defer raises for the upcoming year, saving the university about $2.5 million in fiscal year 2021. Finally, trustees approved the voluntary separation incentive program for staff and faculty who have worked full-time for at least 3 years. Packages vary based on representation. Generally, the package includes a cash incentive based on salary, the retention of the tuition waiver benefit for 4 years, and continued health care for a limited period of time. Polichajenko said that based on a reasonable yet conservative participation estimate, the university expects $23 million in overall savings after considering the 1-year program costs at the beginning of the buyout. Diacon added that the number of layoffs and job cuts will be determined by a number of factors, including the length of the pandemic and the number of people who accept the buyout. Our next article is titled Ravenna Council Okays Menard's Plan for Route 88 Distribution Center by Diane Smith. Ravenna City Council has approved a proposal to bring a distribution and manufacturing center to Ravenna, one that is expected to grow to serve 35 stores in 3 states. But in order to lure Menards to the county seat, Ravenna leaders needed to put together a 62-acre parcel that includes 5 different property owners, including a site that houses a company still in business. Dennis West, the city's economic development director, got approval from council for a 15-year, 100% tax abatement for a Menards distribution center along Route 88 at the city's northeastern border. The proposal already has been approved by the Ravenna Board of Education and must also gain approval at the state and county level. West said Menards needs 75 acres for its $51 million proposal, and noted real estate broker Jack Cole was able to acquire 62 acres for the project, so Menards is now redrawing its plans to fit on the smaller site. West said it is difficult to find large properties with access to rail, which is one thing Menard needs. To put together the project, West said 5 separate parcels along Route 88 were acquired, including 7154 Route 88, which has a building on site that Menards plans to use to construct its trusses and for truck repair. That building now houses Astra Products, a business that manufactures vertical blinds. Ownership at Astra, which also has a facility in Ravenna, did not return phone calls asking about the company's future plans. There will be about 200,000 square feet of additional new construction on site, which will be used for concrete block manufacturing as well as for distribution, warehouse, and storage, West said. West said if everything goes forward as planned, the company would start construction next year and open in 2022. The business would employ 90 people over a 3-year period, with an estimated payroll of $3.498 million a year. The investment in the property includes $34.7 million in property improvements and construction, which is normally taxable under Ohio law. Councilman Rob Karras pointed out the income tax from that payroll will mean about $90,000 per year in income tax revenue for the city. That's the part that intrigues me the most because that's real benefit for the city, he said. I certainly am in favor of this initiative. I'm glad we're seeing it. At a time like this, for an opportunity for a company to come in and offer jobs is quite astounding. West said Menard needs to transport its products by rail and will use a reactivated rail line that has been used by the Akron-Barberton cluster and owned by Wheeling and Lake Erie Railroads. The line will be reactivated and the Akron-Barberton cluster will donate a spur onto the property that would hold a couple of cars for loading and unloading. The site will initially support 10 retail centers and eventually expand to serve 35 stores in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, he said. The spur, he added, is part of the same line as the transloading facility at the Chestnut Commerce Center. West said the project first was proposed 4 years ago through a lead that came from Ohio Means Jobs. This is a great example of how a public-private partnership came together to create a successful project, he said. Well, our next article is titled, Dentists' Reopenings Are Tied to PPA Availability by Bob Gagens. The opening of dental offices in Portage County appears to be tied to the availability of personal protective equipment, including critically face masks. Dr. Edward Kurtz, a Ravenna area dentist, said he places no such importance on masks that he does not plan to reopen his practice until N95 face masks are available for all his staff. In a way, it seemed premature to open dental offices as one of the first things because there's such close contact between the oral cavity and the face of the staff, he said. And that's the reason he insists on the N95 masks, with their ability to block 95% of airborne particulates down to 0.3 microns in size, according to the Food and Drug Administration. According to the Ohio Dental Association, the PPE shortage has been a challenge to dentists around the state. Hospitals and medical practitioners were given top priority for PPE, as was only right at the height of the pandemic, and many dentists donated their masks and gloves to help the cause, wrote Dr. Sharon Parsons, president of the Ohio Dental Association, in a recent statement. Because of this, some dental offices may not yet have the proper PPE necessary to treat their patients. Dental offices are doing their best to acquire necessary PPE, but it may take time. Dental practices are taking various approaches to opening, which they could do as of May 1 with the proper PPE and other protections in place, depending on their access to PPE and needs of their clients. Portage Dental Center, for example, has been open throughout the shutdown, but only for dental emergencies, according to Office Manager Dixie Weisgarber. We are one of the few offices in the county that accept Medicaid and Medicare, and if we closed down, none of those people would have anywhere to go, she said, adding their next stop would be to the nearest emergency department for their dental emergencies. Prior to May 1, during the COVID-19 shutdown, she said, staff was winnowed from 40 to 4, and only the most pressing dental procedures were performed. We did extractions and things like root canals where it is not going to put a lot of aerosols in the air, she said, adding fillings were not performed as emergencies. Several other dentists who closed their own offices completely referred patients to oral surgeons and maxillofacial specialists prior to May 1. Weisgarber was one of several who said they had difficulty acquiring PPE because dental offices are not considered first responders. I want our patients to know that it's okay that we're open, she said. I was able to secure PPE. I was able to get PPE from the Portage County Emergency Management Agency. Dr. Nicholas Hammermeister of Streetsboro General Dentistry said he was able to reopen Monday, but hasn't yet brought back his whole staff. I live in Cuyahoga County. They were giving out boxes of PPE to dentists in Cuyahoga County, he said. It's just my office manager and myself for right now. Other than the PPE supplied by Cuyahoga County, Hammermeister said he's been piecing things together through our reps, and we had some on hand. Additionally, he said, like Weisgarber, has put in place a variety of safety measures limiting the spread of the coronavirus through touch. We keep the front door locked and tell patients to call when they arrive, he said, adding they're required to wear face masks, go through a temperature check, and must wash their hands at the office. We don't have patients crossing paths in the office. Kurtz, whose office is still closed, said he hopes to be able to open early in June, depending on the availability of N95 masks, other PPE, and the spread of COVID-19 statewide. He also said he plans to rid his reception area of magazines and will aggressively sanitize high-touch surfaces like doorknobs. You want to wait a while to see how things shape up, he said, explaining his latter planned opening. You've got to play it according to how things go and what happens here and around the country. And our next article is titled, Kent Man Arrested for Attempted Arson, Domestic Violence. A 19-year-old Kent man was charged with domestic violence, a first-degree misdemeanor, and attempted arson, a fifth-degree felony, after a domestic incident on Tuesday. Kent police said they responded to a reported domestic dispute at a Steincourt address on Tuesday evening. Investigation revealed Tony Rice, 19, whose address is listed as an apartment on Steincourt, was involved in a heated argument with a woman who also lived in the apartment building. During the argument, Rice allegedly grabbed hold of the woman, threw something at her, and also threatened to burn down the building. Rice allegedly lit a piece of paper on fire and set it down. The woman had to extinguish it with water, police said. Rice was arrested and was released on 10% of a $10,000 bond. He was ordered to stay away from the woman. No attorney is listed for him in court records. If you need help, you can call the local crisis hotline at 330-295-3555 or 330-678-4357, or text 4HOPE, the number 4 and the word HOPE, to 741-741. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. And now for some Portage County crime reports. In Freedom Township, A 24-year-old Freedom Township man was charged with domestic violence, a first-degree misdemeanor, after an incident on Wednesday. A warrant was issued for his arrest. In Kent, Jason Messer, 42, of North DePeyster Street, Kent, was charged with domestic violence, a fourth-degree felony, after an incident Friday on North DePeyster Street. According to court records, Messer had a prior conviction for domestic violence. A temporary protection order was filed, and he was released on a 10% of a $20,000 bond. Well, my friends, this concludes the reading of the Record Courier for Thursday, May 6th, 2020. This is Pam, and I am asking you to please keep yourself safe.